Alright, we got Larry Bird and Bill Laimbeer have genuinely hated each other for 30 years. Feel free to subscribe if you like the video. Let's get it.
One thing about Larry Bird's relationship with Bill
No idea
Laimbeer,
who
it's probably
Laimbeer
this
is.
incident from 1987 when Laimbeer put a hard foul on
Whoa!
Bird.
Bro! The video just started, man. Already tackling players. God damn.
And Bird this incident from 1987 when Laimbeer put a
Almost broke his back and his neck at the same time.
hard foul on Bird, and Bird threw a
Ouch.
basketball at Laimbeer. That was a climactic moment, but by no means an isolated incident. It was part of a late 80s war for Eastern Conference dominance, a Boston to Detroit power shift characterized by brilliance and brutality. But these two weren't just participants in a team rivalry. There was beef. Beef before the fight, and more beef to come after it. Beef that persists decades later. Larry Bird and Bill Laimbeer do
Really?
not like each other.
First time I heard about this.
The late 70s was an awesome era of college basketball in the state of Indiana. Bird and Laimbeer entered it from very different directions. Laimbeer was the 7-foot son of a wealthy manufacturing executive, raised in the fancy suburbs of Chicago and LA. He played 4 years at Notre Dame simply because he could. Laimbeer helped the Irish reach their first Final Four in 1978, but he was set for life with little motivation to become a great pro player. That hardly changed when the Cleveland Cavaliers drafted him with the 65th pick in 1979.
Whoa, okay.
Bird was the fourth of 6 siblings who grew up poor in small-town Indiana. Bobby Knight recruited Bird to play at Indiana University, but the overwhelmed and homesick 17-year-old dropped out before his freshman season even began. Bird ended up enrolling at much smaller Indiana State and played so brilliantly there that the Boston Celtics drafted Bird 6th in 1978, even though he planned to stay for his senior year, in which the Sycamores made the 1979 NCAA Final versus Magic Johnson's Michigan State. Bird and Laimbeer didn't really cross paths in college, but Larry definitely knew about Bill, if only because Laimbeer was one of his mother Georgia's favorite players. Cool.
Really?
So let's jump ahead to
Why?
1985. Bird was at
Was
this
not even
point
that good.
already an era-defining superstar, already a 2-time champion with the Celtics, who'd wrested Eastern dominance back from the Sixers, then taken down the mighty Lakers in the '84 finals. Bird held reigning regular season and finals MVP over his friend and rival Magic. Larry was on top of the NBA. Laimbeer wasn't doing so badly for himself either. After a year abroad and a couple years with the miserable Cleveland Cavaliers, Bill had been
Miserable.
traded to the Detroit Pistons, where he joined young superstar point guard Isaiah
Oh, okay.
Thomas, another product of Indiana college basketball and, for what it's worth, another longtime favorite of Georgia Bird. Laimbeer had made a reputation for himself as a Piston. He was a powerful defender and rebounder, a deft outside shooter, a regular all-star right alongside Bird. Dude was also dirty like a diaper. Laimbeer fouled,
I know this
flopped,
was coming.
and whined. Bird
Damn.
already knew the dude's deal from moments like this one in 1982. Laimbeer wildly swinging his elbows, then exploding at the ref who called
Whoa.
a foul. That was just a taste.
Almost
Beginning in
knocked him out.
'85, Bird would get heavy, near-annual doses of the Bill Laimbeer experience. The Pistons and Celtics played 5 playoff series in 7 seasons, with Boston holding the upper hand early on, Detroit taking over at the end of the decade, and both submitting to Michael Jordan's Bulls in the early 90s. But
Submitting.
yeah, that initial power struggle got rough. The Celtics crushed Detroit in Game 1 of the '85 Eastern semifinals. In the second half of what would be another Pistons loss in Game 2, a frustrated Laimbeer
Bro, you
hit
just
Bird
tackling
with one
Larry,
elbow on a
bro.
pump fake,
There's no
then
basketball,
another one that
baby.
left Larry bleeding from his chin. Bird immediately came the other way, demanded the ball from Ray Williams, then buried a jumper. And he wasn't done, despite the blood collecting on his jersey. In the fourth quarter, Bird scorched each of Laimbeer's teammates to reach 30 points. Then 34, 36, 38. Bird finished with 42 points, 17 of them in the fourth quarter of that second victory. He was coy about the incidents that got him going. Yeah, the Pistons got away with a few elbows, but mostly it was the Celtics getting Larry the ball down low. He did note that Laimbeer wasn't playing well and seemed frustrated. Well, Big Bill turned around and dominated Game 3. He led Detroit with 27 points and got into
Ooh.
it with Boston big man Robert Parrish. Bird had more to say this time. He trash-talked Laimbeer on the floor, suggesting Boston was going to sweep Detroit. And after the Pistons actually won Game 3, Bird and the Celtics accused the violent Fowler of drawing fouls the other way by flopping like a fish out of water. Bird said refs favored Laimbeer, that he got all the calls. And he specified that the other Pistons were fine. It was Laimbeer and Laimbeer alone with whom the Celtics had a problem. Laimbeer said the accusations and mockery didn't bother him, but he fired back, calling the Celtics cocky. And this on the same day, reporters spied Bird impersonating Laimbeer on the practice floor. Detroit took Game 4 to tie the series, and Laimbeer accosted the guy who'd predicted a Boston sweep and shouted, "Where's your broom now, guy?" From there, things cooled down a bit. Boston won the series in 6 games and went on to rematch the Lakers in the finals. Laimbeer was chastened and never messed with Larry and the Celtics again. Just kidding. Detroit got Laimbeer a new fouling companion, Rick Mahorn, in the summer of '85.
Bro, how many menace to society the Pistons end up having on their team? Because every time I see about the 90s, 80s, about the Pistons, it's always straight problem with this team, bro. Every single time.
Here are those two giving Larry a nice thump in November of that
Like
year.
every
When
single
Larry
time,
found
bro.
out Bill had been left off the '86 Eastern All-Star team after making it 3 straight years, he said, "Good, now I won't have to worry about him saying, 'Hi, Larry,' and me having to say, 'F you, Bill.'" Bird definitely wasn't shy about his feelings toward Laimbeer. When SI's Jack McCallum asked the Celtics about their foe in '86, Bill Walton wouldn't let his response be printed. Parrish said, "If you can't say something nice about someone, then don't say anything." Bird delivered the blunt answer everyone else was withholding. "We don't like him that good." Well, Bird and friends were lucky to avoid his company that postseason. Detroit lost in the first round, so Boston didn't have to battle Laimbeer and the Pistons to win their way to the '86 championship. No such luck the next season. The Celtics and Pistons met in the 1987 Eastern Conference Finals, and it was not a
Pistons
cordial meeting.
really good,
Not
man.
with the man Michael Jordan had just dubbed the NBA's dirtiest player involved. Just like in '85, the Celtics took care of the first 2 games at home. So just like in '85, Laimbeer made his presence felt in Game 3. The climax of a tense and violent Pistons victory arrived when Bird pump-faked Laimbeer into the air, and Laimbeer came down with his sledgehammer.
This is
Bird
crazy,
was not
man.
pleased and had to be pried off Laimbeer in a dog pile. So
Bro, he
Larry
almost
found
broke.
himself a
It could.
long-range
This
weapon
could
and
have.
pegged Laimbeer with
This
the
could have had Larry a
got ejected
career,
for
bro. I'm not
starting the
gonna lie.
fight.
That was.
Bird got ejected for the ball throwing.
Hold
The
on.
Pistons went on to win that game,
Talking
and
too
now
much.
the
I
real
missed
weapon
something.
and pegged Laimbeer with the basketball. Laimbeer got ejected for starting the fight. Bird got ejected for the ball throwing. The Pistons went on to win that game, and now the real game was afoot, the beef game. Bird was still fuming in the locker room. He reminded everyone of what MJ said, then went in on Laimbeer. He wished the refs would have just cleared the court and let them fight because Bill didn't want any part of Larry. Bird acknowledged that he was at fault for throwing the ball, but he wasn't intimidated and had to protect himself from someone like Laimbeer. The opposing recollection was vintage Laimbeer. "I didn't do a thing. I was trying to break his fall, and Larry just came up swinging. I was
What?
victimized by my reputation."
That's
Bird
a
wouldn't
lie,
hear it.
bro.
"Sure, he wasn't trying to hurt me, and I was trying to throw the ball to the referee. Bill's face just got in the way." The beef ran more icy than hot in Game 4. Bird refused to shake Laimbeer's hand before the game, and even though a lineup shift put Bird on Laimbeer as a defender, the two of them didn't really get into it. Laimbeer just quietly dominated the smaller Bird, and Detroit tied the series with a blowout
Damn.
victory at home. But afterward,
Is that the
Bird
year they
made
won?
clear he wasn't over the Game 3 incident. Laimbeer suggested he'd made snidey comments after the denied handshake in Game 4. And asked about said snidey comment, Bird repeated it as "go blank blank," which I guess doesn't stand for "go enjoy yourself," since Larry also said, "I don't like Bill Laimbeer, why should I shake his hand?" Laimbeer? Well, you never know until you try. This was very much Bill
Man.
Laimbeer's MO. Incite conflict on the court, laugh it off and play dumb later. Anyway, back to Boston for Game 5. Laimbeer, who had just been fined $5,000 for the
Damn.
fight, sarcastically anticipated a warm reception after he'd knocked down the hero of Celtics fans. Bird was actually kind of wary. He didn't like Laimbeer, but he also didn't want someone to hurt him or anything like that. Bird was talking about the fans in that quote. He neglected to share that sentiment with his teammates. In Game 5, Bird made his point with another refused handshake. Bird's pal Robert Parrish emphasized that point with his hands. These claws to the face didn't even get a foul call, let alone a technical or ejection.
Man, see, that's the thing, bro. See, I don't agree with this, bro. I understand he was doing all those fouls, man, but come on, man. This feel, you're not gonna tell me this is an accident, bro. He did that on purpose. He did that on purpose. Like, stop messing with my superstore, basically.
Bird's
Like,
pal
come
Robert
on,
Parrish
man. There was
point
no
with
need for
another
this, bro.
refused
Come on,
handshake.
man.
Bird's pal Robert Parrish
This
emphasized
is straight.
that point with his
Come
hands.
on, man. You
These
didn't have to do
claws
all
the
that,
face
bro.
didn't even get a foul call, let alone a technical or ejection. Anyway, in this pivotal Game 5, the basketball eclipsed the beef. With just seconds left and the Pistons up 1, Bird got his shot blocked and the ball caromed out of bounds off the Celtics. As Isaiah Thomas hurried his inbound to Laimbeer, Detroit had the win in hand. But then Bird engineered one of the most
That's where this clip coming from. Oh, one of the biggest mistake I ever seen in an NBA final or in an NBA playoff. Oh my, that Isaiah was so in a hurry that
inbound to Laimbeer.
common sense didn't work
Detroit
anymore,
had
bro.
the win in hand.
He just
But
didn't see.
Then Bird
Oh
engineered one
man,
of the most legendary
awful
plays
pass.
and one of the best Johnny Most radio calls in Celtics history.
Now there's a steal by Bird. Underneath the DJ, lays it in. Right at 1 second left. What a play by Bird.
That was the decisive play of the series. Parrish got suspended for the attack that Bird deemed a good deed, and Boston lost Game 6 without.
A good day. Bro, what?
Parrish got suspended for the attack that Bird deemed a good deed, and Boston lost Game 6 without him.
Oh,
But back home for Game 7, the Celtics won the series, thanks in part to Adrian Dantley and
Good
Vinny Johnson
deed.
cracking
That's funny.
heads, which knocked Dantley out and out of the game. After Vinny Johnson home for Game 7, the Celtics won the series, thanks in part to Adrian Dantley and Vinny Johnson cracking heads, which knocked Dantley out.
they injured him, bro. Two teammates
After the
injuring
final buzzer,
themselves.
Laimbeer predictably
Ironic.
sought Bird out for a handshake, and Bird just kind of walked through it. Larry remained clear at series end that his grudge wasn't going away. He always respected opponents, but believed Laimbeer had tried to hurt him. And Sidney Green, who left the Pistons after that season, told people that Laimbeer had premeditated an attempt to injure Bird. That storyline might have lingered if Dennis Rodman and Isaiah Thomas hadn't said some spicy stuff that commandeered everyone's attention. But even still, Laimbeer had more than secured his place that commandeered
Two Pistons say Bird called best because he's white.
everyone's attention. But even still, Laimbeer had more than secured his place among the NBA's so-called thugs. His Pistons would soon come to be known as the Bad Boys. '88 brought a conference finals rematch, and Laimbeer was certain that would be Detroit's.
Bro, I guess people crying for the
utmost
smallest thing
confidence.
always been
Bird
happening
was
for
like,
decades,
I'm
bro.
sure he's confident. I'm sure he was confident last year too. The '88 series was less explosive, but still
And it's
cranky.
funny because none of those two are better than Larry. Like, they're not better than him, so it's kind of funny though.
Laimbeer hurt his
If you
shoulder
were better than
early
him, it
on,
would make
and
sense.
Bird
But
shot explosive, but still cranky. Laimbeer hurt his shoulder early on, and Bird shot poorly all series long. They still got into it a bit, like this brief tangle during Game 2, but the extracurricular behavior
hey, man, Laimbeer didn't do anything anymore though. It was just
was
chilling.
relatively tame early on. By Game 4, Bird was guarding Laimbeer again, which led to the usual shoving and the occasional technical, and also Laimbeer having a big scoring night. The Celtics won that game to tie the series, and Bird mocked Laimbeer a bit for passing up the final shot. But as Larry remained ice cold, the Pistons pulled away in Games 5 and 6 to seize the Eastern crown. In a move the Pistons would one day famously imitate, the bitter Celtics starters walked off the floor before the final buzzer commenced the Silverdome celebration.
Damn.
That was the beginning of the end of an excellent Celtics era. Bird was too hurt to face the Pistons in the first round the following season. Detroit swept Boston that series and eventually swept the Lakers to win Laimbeer and company their first title in '89. Detroit repeated the following season while Boston once again bounced in the first round. The Celtics and Pistons met again in the 91 Eastern semifinals, but Bird was once again slowed by back injuries, and this was really just a battle to see who would become the Bulls' conference final victim. It was finally Jordan's time.
Man.
MJ, by the way, was...
Wait, so Isaiah got 2 rings then. Okay.
Pretty clear in 1990 how he felt about Bird and Laimbeer's chippy play on the floor.
If you had 273 professional basketball players and you say who's the dirtiest player in the NBA, you know, I say 95%, I say Laimbeer or Larry Bird.
Granted, I think neither guy would deny this characterization. Laimbeer, for one, released a video game called Combat Basketball in 1991. He owned his reputation. Anyway, both guys' careers wound down in the
Release a video game? They what? That's, bro. NBA players and releasing a video game just doesn't make sense in the same sentence, bro.
Laimbeer, for one, released a video game called Combat. Guys' careers wound down in the early 90s, and fans were left to wonder whether their mutual distaste would cool in retirement. Well, when the Celtics retired Bird's jersey in 1993, Bob Costas joked that it was a perfect night even though Laimbeer couldn't attend. And Bird said, "We'd probably hang him up there with my jersey." When Laimbeer contemplated...
Bro, man, y'all are old men. Just let it go, bro.
Bird said, "We'd probably hang him up there with my jersey."
2 old men still fighting,
when
bro.
Laimbeer contemplated his own retirement later that year, he said, "I don't want to go out like Larry Bird," aka worn down and injured in his final game. But what about later? In the decades since retiring, both Bird and Laimbeer have stayed close to basketball, coaching, managing, and making media appearances. And when you make media appearances, this stuff comes up now and then. In 2008, Laimbeer was head coach of
That's
the
a long
WNBA's
time ago,
Detroit
2008.
Shock. Bird was an executive for the Indiana Pacers, who were in the middle of a playoff drought. When the Shock visited Indianapolis to play the Fever, Laimbeer went on local radio. He got asked about Bird, and he answered. I can't find the audio, but the wonderful Indy Cornrows blog transcribed it at the time. Laimbeer said he didn't really pay attention to how the Pacers were doing, but also betrayed that he kinda did. When Bob Kravitz confirmed the Pacers hadn't been making the postseason, the guy who had coached the Shock to multiple rings was like, "That would drive me nuts. I'd probably quit." After piling on a bit more about Bird's inability to lead Indiana to a title, Laimbeer was asked about staying in touch with Larry and said he just didn't care to. They didn't grow up together, they were never friends, so why hang out? Finally, Laimbeer was asked what he would do if Bird called him and offered him a job with the Pacers, and he guessed that entire premise was faulty. And while Bird did go on record in 2009 to say Laimbeer was a hell of a coach, I think Laimbeer guessed correctly. In 2013, Bird was interviewed by a fan and didn't sound like he'd forgiven Laimbeer for the way he played.
You never really ever liked Laimbeer in any social situation?
No.
Yeah.
And it's because he was a dirty player.
And Laimbeer isn't interested in what I guess is the post-playing version of trying to shake Bird's hand.
Larry Bird's sitting next to you right now. Would you talk to him? Would you have a conversation with him? What would you say?
I'd probably go to a different table.
So yeah, it's not like they're still drawing blood and throwing basketballs, but
Really
beef
ate each
between
other's,
Bill
bro.
Laimbeer and Larry Bird may never die. Laimbeer was
guess.
a very good player.
He's like Michael Jordan and Isaiah. I don't know really the story. I do, but it's the same thing with
Thrived
them
on
too.
starting shit. He said it best. I don't fight, I agitate, then walk away. Well, it turns out one of the greatest players of all time wasn't just going to let him walk away. Not this guy, not that night in '87, not before, and not since. Years of playoff conflict that culminated in a power shift, all but guaranteed personal feuds.
Damn.
Of all those subplots, this is the one that never went away. Sometimes, when you agitate people, they stay agitated forever.
Sheesh. Nice quote, bro.